Good morning. How's everyone doing? Good? So amazing. I see people standing in the back. Amazing to see the size of this room. Exciting to be here with all of you on our first Snowflake Summit. Thank you for being here with us. And as Frank said, we are the data nation, and there is one thing that all of us have in common, and it is that we all understand the importance of data. We all understand the strategic importance of data, the need to turn data into insight and do it quickly, of course. We all understand that we want to turn data into value. And that is our goal at Snowflake. We want to help you in that process of turning data into value and make the process simpler for you. Make it easier, make it faster for sure, and make it less expensive. We want to help you focus on getting value out of your data. We want to help you improve your products and services and not be spending time on infrastructure, right? Sometimes it says we talk about managing infrastructure, but it comes across as wrestling with the infrastructure, and we want to remove that from your to-do list. Our goal is focus on getting value out of the data. And that is a little bit of the context of this talk today. I want to talk about innovation, and I love this word, relentless, because that is how we approach product development and product improvements at Snowflake. We are constantly, every quarter, every week, every day, figuring out how we can improve the technology to serve you better, to do work harder for you, to simplify things for you. So what we're going to do in the next few minutes, I'm going to do a quick recap of innovation that has happened in the last 12 months. And I think some of you are interested to know what's coming in terms of innovation. Do you all want to see some demos? Good. So I've been building databases and database systems for a little over 20 years. And I have no problem saying Snowflake is the best cloud data warehouse in the market. You can call me biased, of course, but I think I would say the same thing if I worked somewhere else. Because for those of us that have been doing databases and technology to manage data for a long time, once we saw what our founders did with Snowflake, I think we quickly appreciate how deep the innovation runs and how transformative Snowflake is to what we can do with the data. By the way, I want to call out Benoit, our founder, is doing the keynote tomorrow, and he's going to tell you the story of how they came up with Snowflake, what was in their minds, and how it came to be, and he'll talk about the architecture and what's unique. So hopefully you don't miss such an event. And of course, just saying that we have the best cloud data warehouse is not sufficient. The most interesting thing to me is that it keeps getting better. We keep innovating, we keep adding capabilities, we keep listening to you, listening to your feedback, and we improve the product continuously. As a matter of fact, every week we are upgrading the service, adding capabilities, adding performance, adding things that make the technology work harder and better for you. And we do so with no planned downtime. And when I had this slide, someone told me, why are you going to talk about no planned downtime on upgrade? It seems like an obvious thing. And the reasons to talk about it is because it's not obvious. I get the question all the time. So tell me about your maintenance window and the downtime, and if I have a long-running query, will it get interrupted or not? And the answer is no, it's a managed service. And as Frank said, it's built from the ground up for the cloud. An upgrade of the technology was built in from day one. It's super important that the software gets upgraded with no interruptions to data. And how many of you still spend a lot of time upgrading database systems? Anyone wants to fess up to running at least 5, 10-year-old database software? Imagine if you no longer have to be spending time on that, and again, you spend time thinking of your data. And the state of the industry is such that this is still not the common characteristic of database systems, right? People still think about maintenance windows, and there's innovation in terms of I'll let you schedule the interruption, where none of that happens with Snowflake. So thinking about how we make Snowflake better every single week, I said, okay, what did we do in the last 12 months? And I did, off the top of my head, I came up with a few features. I just wrote it down, and it said, oh, I think we did a lot more. So I went back and looked at some of our roadmap decks, and I came up with a next round of features. And then I said, you know what, I think we've done a lot more. I went through every single release notes. It's all in our website, so you can fact check me. And I came up with a much more crowded slide. And the message behind this and the reason to show you this is because we are constantly trying to improve the product and make it better address your needs. And this is not a numbers game. This is not oh, if I create lots of features that nobody cares about, then can I come and stand in front of you and say, oh, we're awesome. No, for every single feature that it's in there, I can tell you a customer or customers or some of you in the room that have validated or helped us guide the investment to make sure that we're delivering value. I have a quote here from Abhijit from Slack, where he says that they had data in a specific format, format compression, LZO, and they were just like dead in the water without the ability to ingest that data. We talked, we added the capability, and they got unblocked. At the same time, I am not setting the expectation that anything you want will get done in a few weeks. But what I do want you all to know is we are committed to partnering with you, to working with you, and see how we can help you move forward with Snowflake and get the most value out of Snowflake. And I have endless number of examples and instances where we partner with our customers. We know that your success, our success is tied to your success, so we want to see you succeed. I want to take a moment to also acknowledge our partners. Frank mentioned we can't go at it alone, and a lot of our innovation, a lot of our success is thankful to our partnerships. And it runs deep. It runs from integration in the product. We have this notion of Partner Connect, where we give a one-click trial of partner products that help complement the Snowflake experience. And we keep adding new partners to this Partner Connect on a regular basis. When we launched earlier last year, we had 3 tiles, and you can see how many we have more, and more are coming. We also continue to invest in our solution partners to make sure that you have a set of resources that will help you adopt, migrate to, and get the most out of Snowflake at all points in time. And we're also work on delivering implementation guidelines, reference architecture, best practices to let you get the most out of Snowflake. As an example, yesterday we announced a quick start on AWS that lets you set up Tableau, configure to work with Snowflake, and you can do all in a matter of minutes. And last but not least, in terms of validation of the innovation that we've been having in the last few years, is the industry analyst reports. It's amazing to be able to stand here and say that only with 3 years of participating in the quadrants and the analyst reports, we are today a leader both in the Gartner Magic Quadrant as well as the Forrester Data Warehousing Cloud. So with that, I want to express a very, very sincere thank you to all of you here. The momentum and success of Snowflake is thanks to you in many ways, both customers and partners. So thank you. So now the question that I think all of you are here to try to answer and know more. And okay, what's next? What are you doing? Are you done with your data warehouse? And I've broken up the sections of what we're innovating on and working on into these 4 categories. There's a core data warehouse. There's a set of pipelines. We'll talk about it. I'll share with you some of our vision and direction on global Snowflake, as well as complementing what Frank already showed you on what we're doing on data sharing. And an important message for all of you today is, yes, Snowflake started as a core data warehouse, and we continue to invest heavily in it. We'll go through the different announcements and different sections of investment. But at the same time, we get feedback from all of you that you want more and more from Snowflake, and that's how we continue to expand the capabilities. So let's get started on the core data warehouse section. This is the birthright of Snowflake. And it always starts with performance. It's amazing that no matter how much hardware, software, query optimization, algorithms improve, we always want more performance. And at Snowflake, we never stop thinking about performance. I had the privilege and opportunity to spend a lot of time with our founders. Thierry, I see him in the second row. He's here in the conference. I think every other idea from Thierry is this amazing, insane idea on how to make the system perform better. If you get a chance to chat with him, he's going to be here in the conference. If you're talking up with him, you may even get faster yourself, because everything he's trying to do is just make the system more efficient. So I'm not going to go into number and specific investments in performance. We have a dozen or so in progress and unlimited number more projects in flight. We're going to accelerate every single part of query performance, from how we compile queries to query execution to how we return results to the clients. I'm going to call out 2 specific areas of focus beyond the basics where we're investing significantly. One of them is a workload that we call high concurrency, low latency. And it's basically where you have interactive applications, interactive dashboards, where it's typically lots of smaller queries at a very high level of concurrency because you have lots of users. Today, many of our customers are doing that with Snowflake, but based on feedback, based on opportunity, we're investing in making that an even better experience for you. The other extreme that we're investing in is large ad hoc queries. It may be either an ad hoc exploration query or a data science-y type of exploration. We also want to make sure that those queries can run as fast as you want them to run. So big message, performance, even though often I hear that, oh, we're very impressed with the performance of Snowflake, I would say it's only going to get significantly better. The other fundamental that we're always investing in, that we're always thinking of, is security. Every time that I'm talking to someone that is considering Snowflake, I hear well, but you need to get through our security team. And at this point, my answer is fairly confident, which is just bring them on. I think we've gotten through all sorts of scrutiny, and we get comfortable with the type of guarantees that you want from Snowflake. So when we talk about security, it's both securing the system, but also security capabilities. And we also invest in security capabilities, features, access control, identity, et cetera. Examples of technologies that we're investing in. Very common request we hear is to be able to relay identity from an application that is connecting to Snowflake all the way back to use that identity in Snowflake. Canonical example is if you have a business intelligence tool, and there's an identity connecting to the business intelligence tool, you want to pass through that identity. Useful for all sorts of reasons. You can enforce access control, auditing, non-repudiation, etc. We have now made available OAuth as a way to pass in that identity. And we're working with a number of application vendors. We already partner with Tableau, and they have made available support for OAuth from Snowflake. And we're working with Microsoft, Looker, and many others to take advantage of this capability. Similarly, we are adopting the standard SCIM, Standard for Cross-Identity Management. And it's a standard that lets you relay changes to an identity provider all the way to a consuming application. The example is if your identity provider is creating users or deleting users or creating roles or deleting roles, we can automatically keep those principles in sync when in Snowflake. And you may be thinking, well, I can do that myself, so it's not that interesting. Except that for those of you in the room that you do that yourself, you know that it's painful. And again, the theme of how we think about it is, how do we make it easy and simpler for you to operate Snowflake? There are many other investments in security. An important theme is we're trying to better encapsulate the touch points with external systems, and we're doing so through a series of objects, series of first-class objects we call integrations, and I'll give you an example in a few slides. And another pillar of our core data warehouse capability is not just, okay, performance and security, yes, we all want it, but I want features. And if you saw my word cloud with lots of features, there is no end of new capabilities that we're adding to our SQL engine, both functions and aggregates and query operators, etc. I am not going to cover them in detail. There's a session tomorrow called New SQL Features, and you will be able to get in detail everything that we're adding to the product. I want to highlight two topics. One is around extensibility. Many of you in the room are building applications on top of Snowflake. And extensibility is key to help you build richer and more powerful apps on Snowflake. We've added JavaScript functions, and we recently made generally available JavaScript stored procedures. But we have a significant investment and all the desire to continue to make the system more extensible, including business logic in other languages, as well as making the type system more extensible. So you can have, for example, user-defined types. And at the same time, we are leveraging that same extensibility to accelerate the already fast path of innovation and how we deliver features to you. For example, we're looking at adding geospatial capabilities built on top of the type system extensibility that I just described. So lots of new capabilities. We're not standing still by any means. You'll see more specific announcements through the rest of the conference and in the coming months. Let me switch gears a little bit to talk about our user interface, and in particular about our analyst experience. From day one, I think our founders said, we understand that a rich set of tools to interface with and interact with the database engine is an important part of the experience. And we have, as you're familiar with, the worksheets, which we did a lot of work to revamp over the last year or so. We delivered a long list of enhancements and fixes and improvements that had come from you. We called it Worksheet 3.0. We received tons of feedback, very, very good feedback, and I think anyone that had been using previous versions of worksheets would say, we're very happy with the new one. And at the same time, we got an even longer list of things that you'll like to see, which is usually the case in all the things. you make forward progress, and then there's even more to do. So as we were planning what was coming next after Worksheets 3.0, we met an individual. He had founded a company. The company was called Numeracy. And what they had delivered was exactly a modern query editor. And the more we learned about what they had done, the more we realized that it was very, very aligned with everything we had planned and were intending to work on and add to our worksheets. Also, we had, or this company had a number of customers that were Snowflake customers, and we're using this tool against Snowflake. So it was a very interesting validation. And what does this tool have? It has capabilities such as editor suggestions. So if you've specified, say, the table name, it'll autocomplete, it'll give you a list of column names that you can choose. It has straightforward visualization, because sometimes an image tells a story 10 times better than a grid of data, and you can visually see the results of a query with a number of chart types. And also, something that I've heard from many, many of you is the ability to do sharing of both queries as well as results and visualizations. So I know that talking a lot about an editor doesn't sound super exciting, or you cannot get a feel for how appealing and compelling this experience is. So I'd like to invite this individual, who is Brian Smith. He was the founder of this company. Now he's an engineering manager at Snowflake. And we're going to go get a peek of what's coming in terms of our editor experience. Please welcome Brian.
Thank you, Christian. When we created Numeracy, we wanted to build the best user interface for your data warehouse. And now that we're part of Snowflake, we're working to provide an even more integrated and seamless experience. I wanted to share some of the things you can look forward to once we've integrated with Snowflake. The first is easier query authoring. You can see here that I have a new query with the query editor at the top and the schema browser at the bottom. The schema browser lets you type whatever you're looking for, and it'll return all the matching tables and columns as quickly as you can type. You can then pin the tables you're interested in for later reference. While you're writing your query, the autocomplete will suggest all the tables, columns, and functions that you can use. These suggestions are based on the contents of your query. So for example, it'll only show you columns that are in tables you're actually querying. The second big improvement is that visualization is built right into the query editor, so you don't have to leave your editor in order to visualize your data. Every time you run a query, we'll generate a visualization for every column in your data set, depending on the data that's in that column. So for example, the state column here has a histogram showing the time period that the data is distributed over. You can click and drag on the histogram, and it'll filter down the results to just data within that range. This is useful not only for exploring your data, but also for surfacing data quality issues. If you want to create a custom visualization, you can click on the Chart tab. This lets you specify exactly the data you want to visualize, all without writing any additional SQL. The third big improvement is that once you have the results or chart that you want, you can easily share a link to it with team members. When you're sharing with team members, you can control whether they can edit, view, or run your query. This makes it really easy to hand off your work regardless of the SQL proficiency of the other person. This sharing is all mediated by Snowflake roles, so admins can control exactly what kind of sharing can happen for each role. This is just a sneak peek of what we have in store, and we're really excited to share this in the months to come. Thank you.
Isn't it cool? Yeah, so we're working now on integrating the best in Numeracy with the best of worksheets, and Brian and his team are sprinting as fast as he can to make it available to all of you, because I'm aware that all of you want it. We have started using it internally, and I can tell you we're delighted with what we're seeing. Let me shift gears a little bit to a big part of what we hear is, okay, Snowflake is amazing, we like the core data warehouse, etc. but I need Snowflake to be in more locations, in my region, in my cloud, etc. And we have been on this treadmill for some time, adding new regions, adding new clouds. Frank just announced our partnership with Google, and we'll do it in response to your demand. Our goal is to meet you where you are. So what you see on the screen, we are adding additional regions on AWS, including Canada, Ohio, and we're in the early stages of planning for Japan. Similarly, we're expanding our Azure footprint. You see both Canada Central, Singapore, as well as US West 2. And I want to give a shout out to the entire team at Snowflake and people from Microsoft as well that worked on our government cloud that was announced as being generally available yesterday. And then, as Frank told you, we are announcing today the availability, no, not the availability, no availability, scratch that. Our partnership and our intent to move Snowflake and have a port of Snowflake available on GCP. And to give you a little bit more color on the partnership, and we will talk about when it's going to be available, I want to invite Kevin Ishpurani, who is the head of global ecosystem in the Google Cloud team. So join me in welcoming Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
How you doing today?
Awesome.
Good morning,
awesome.
everyone.
Thank you for being here with us.
It's a pleasure.
So I was talking backstage with Kevin, and there was this interesting phenomenon that we have been hearing a lot of interest on this region and this and that region. And in the last year, it went as if from, I don't know if Google is in the cloud business, et cetera, to everyone wanted us to have Snowflake on the Google Cloud. And I don't know if you can share with us a little bit on what happened, what is behind that demand, and what are you seeing with Google Cloud and demand from customers?
Great question. There's a couple trends that we're seeing that are driving significant uptick. Number one, the way customers are buying cloud is fundamentally changing. 2 years ago, it was largely around lift and shift and TCO reduction. Today, we're seeing that it's a multi-horizon journey, meaning Horizon 1 is I'm going to lift and shift, lower my costs, eliminate my data silos. Horizon 2 is I'm now going to think about how do I start to optimize my business process. That could be supply chain, hyper-personalization. And Horizon 3 is how do I completely disrupt the business model within my industry altogether. And so we're seeing in every industry this happen. So if you look at retailers, we have retailers that are taking point-of-sale data, but they want to do demand planning, and historical is not everything. So how do I marry that, leveraging machine learning to look at everything from television commercials to social media and do predictive, so that you can understand that in this country, in this region, this orange sweater is going to be the hottest thing 3 months from now and do store-level demand planning. Banks are looking at enormous amounts of data and doing anomaly detection with our machine learning. You're looking at companies in manufacturing that are putting cameras on the assembly line and actually catching defects within materials so humans don't have to intervene. These are the kind of things we're seeing at mass scale, and this is really driving a pretty big change in the uptick in the thinking and the way people are buying cloud. The second trend we're seeing is that we recently did a study of large enterprise customers. 88% of them want to be multi-cloud in the next 2 years. 88%. And so I think your moves of being multi-cloud are quite astute. And we've taken a different approach. Rather than go with lock-in, we've created what we call a platform of platform, Anthos, that allows a customer to basically build once and deploy anywhere. That means they can start on-prem, they can move to Google Cloud, they'll even be able to run in the other public clouds. So zero lock-in, no need to really build to one specific cloud provider specifications. And we think this is a real game changer as well.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about how you think over at Google about this partnership with us. How do you think about Snowflake? How does it round up your offering? How does it work? And this is where you get to also tell us how should we think about availability and when can we get to play with it?
Yeah, great question. So we're very excited about the partnership. Even though there are areas where we have overlapping solutions between the two companies, Google Cloud is committed to customer choice, which means if you choose Snowflake, we have a deep engineering relationship to ensure the best security, to ensure the best uptime, to ensure that we have the best performance. We're working on everything from storage and caching to ensure that the best performance occurs for customers leveraging Snowflake. And we're also working on how they can leverage best-of-breed machine learning capabilities on top of Snowflake to enhance the analytics. And to your question on when will availability, we're looking.
Anyone wants to know when?
So we're going to have the preview in Q3 of this year.
Awesome, awesome, and yeah, I think I get the question a lot on why not sooner, why not tomorrow, and in reality, there's deep engineering, and for example, our security teams are partnering together, making sure that we can deliver the same set of guarantees and promises that you have on Snowflake, they come available on GCP. So Frank also mentioned this mutual customer of ours, McKesson. I've been personally on a number of calls where McKesson is, can we get on Google, Snowflake on Google today? And we're like, hang in there. Tell us more about McKesson, how they're taking a bet on GCP, and how does Snowflake fit in?
Yeah, so McKesson is a relatively recent customer as of last year. And McKesson chose us for a couple reasons. Number one, they had a very large amount of data, both from their oncologist network as well as from all the pharmacies, all the patient data. And they wanted to do two things. Number one, they wanted to harvest and mine that data to do better predictive for demand planning for their manufacturers. Secondly, they wanted to take a lot of this data and create a more personalized one-to-one experience for the end consumers. So that was one big reason they chose GCP. The other was they had one of the largest SAP systems in the world, and moving SAP systems involves tremendous scale. Uptime is everything in this business, and we have the highest uptime in the industry. And lastly, security. And so for those reasons, they made a big investment into moving a lot of their workloads to GCP. And now this is the next leg of the journey, which is actually moving the Snowflake instance over as all, which is actually very intertwined with the SAP environment. So really drives this journey further and further, and we're really excited to working together with you on and helping them become very successful.
No. Likewise, we are very, very excited about the partnership with Kevin and Google overall. We've heard no end of demand from many of you. I think the point in multi-cloud resonates with what we hear. So appreciate the partnership, and thank you for being here with us today.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That wraps up the core data warehouse section. And now I'm going to go into a little bit more of adjacent areas. All still within Snowflake, but it's different use cases and different capabilities that we want to enable for you. And this one is around data pipelines and how do we help you, or how do we simplify for you, build data pipelines in Snowflake. So this diagram should be fairly understandable for you. You see a number of data sources on the left from web and mobile apps and IoT. And the way you ingest them into Snowflake, usually the data lands on a stage. Then you ingest it through one or two mechanisms, either Snowpipe or a copy command. And they typically land on a staging table. And I'll give you context on why I'm calling it a staging table. I decided to add here in the diagram the option of unloading data from Snowflake because it's something that we care a lot about. We do a lot of work to make unloading of data, getting data out of Snowflake, be a performant and a scalable and a good operation. And you can say that may not sound too strategic. Why would you want to take the data out? And the reason is very important. We want you to have your data in Snowflake because you're getting value out of your data in Snowflake, not because you're stuck with your data in Snowflake like you may be with the other systems. So it's very important for us to give you the choice and the capability, and you can unload at high performance into industry standard formats. Of course, we're trying to give you enough value and significant value that you find no reason to take your data elsewhere. So a number of enhancements on this area. And the category of feedback we heard is around we want improvements on how to ingest data, but we also want improvements on how to transform data. So the first capability I want to mention today is the notion of credential-less stages. And this ties back to what I mentioned in the security section on how we're better encapsulating the interfaces and touch points with external security systems. So today in Snowflake, when you create a stage, you get both the object that you're using for, say, loading data, as well as the security configuration and the touch point with the underlying cloud storage provider, be it S3 or Azure Blob or GCS, Google Cloud Storage. What we're doing with credential-less stages is separating the stage from the actual configuration of the physical touch point with the storage, and we do it through an object called a storage integration. So one change with the storage integration is you're no longer passing credentials as part of the configuration. There's no key passing, no token passing. We just created a well-known identity that you can give access to. And then when you create a stage, or when you give one of your users access to create a stage, they create it on top of the storage integration. The storage integration, you get to specify things like what are the allowed bucket paths or the disallowed bucket paths. And with this, we're enabling a separation of roles and more control on what are the points of contact with the underlying storage. As part of the work that we're doing on credential-less stages, we are also making available Google Cloud Storage as a source of stages ahead of our delivery of Snowflake on GCP. So if you have data in Google Cloud Storage and you want to ingest it into Snowflake, this will be available as part of the credential-less stages. The next capability on the realm of ingest is something that we call auto-ingest. And it has been on a fairly wide preview with AWS. It is just got to private preview with Azure. And what auto-ingest does is it sets up notifications and underlying queuing mechanisms such that as new files arrive on your stage, we automatically ingest them into Snowflake, again, simplifying the process for you. Then many of you have told us that you have been using Kafka as a way to move your data from source to whenever you're ready to process it. And often it goes from Kafka to Snowflake, and usually it goes to Kafka to S3, and then you do either Snowpipe or Snowpipe auto-ingest to insert it. So today we're announcing that we are providing a Kafka connector that streamlines and simplifies this entire flow. So basically you can deploy your Kafka connector, and it'll take data directly to Kafka all the way into a table or tables in Snowflake. There is no magic behind the scenes. We are, under the covers, creating the stage, creating the pipes, etc. But we ensure that the process is reliable for you, and we're taking away additional configuration steps for you should you be using Kafka as the source of your data. So the second part on the feedback that we hear is, usually I get the data into Snowflake, but that is rarely the final form of the data that I want to have. Usually I want to transform it into downstream operations. And usually the pattern that you follow is fairly common. You try to know what has changed or what are the new changes to a table, and then you apply some operation to persist in a different table. So we're today introducing two primitives, two new capabilities that closely map those two activities. First capability, we call it a table stream. And a stream is a new object that you get to define on top of an underlying table. And when you read from a stream, you get to read what has changed in the underlying table at the row level since the last time that you read from the stream. And streams are also transactional. So the typical pattern is I will begin a transaction, I'll read from the stream, and I'll do something with those changes, and only when I commit, the stream advances, making it very easy for you to do incremental processing of data. The other, you like it? Then the other primitive that we're introducing today is the notion of a task. And that task is nothing but the binding of a schedule with a SQL statement. So you get to have a SQL statement running on a schedule. That SQL statement can be a stored procedure. So now you get multiple statements all running on a task. And as part of our ability to schedule tasks, we have made optimizations, for example, to say, only run this task if that stream has new records, so you don't get to run tasks when there's no data in there. And we've also added the ability to have dependencies between tasks. So you can start to piece together broader data transformations, effectively pipelines, through these two very powerful primitives. And I think for some of you, all of this, or following my words may be clear, but I think it's always more exciting when we get to see technology in action. So Torsten Grabs is the product manager for all of these areas. Most of the team is based out in Bellevue, Washington, and he's here with us to show us all of these technologies. Please welcome Torsten.
Thank you, Christian, and good morning, Snowflake Summit. It's great to be here. So let me start with a question. Why is it so hard to build continuous data pipelines with reliable execution guarantees? Well, one of the reasons is you have to pick a messaging system. You have to connect your messaging system to your data sources. You have to configure that messaging system to load data into Snowflake. But also you have to write your business logic, run it 24/7, and manage the compute resources that do that. For the purpose of this demo, I've chosen an IoT scenario to illustrate how easy that gets with the new data pipeline features that Christian just introduced. For this summit, we have custom built a number of IoT devices. They look like that. They're built on the Particle Argon platform. They're connected to the internet. And they're tracking activity like movement when I'm moving it around, motion, velocity, also orientation and temperature. So what Christian is saying, take a look at your watches. That will be useful in a couple of minutes. So as I mentioned, the device that you see here is connected to the internet, and we have built a complete end-to-end data pipeline behind this device. Let me show you the pipeline first. So the data is being sent first into a Kafka topic. We're listening on that Kafka topic and loading data continuously into a staging table in Snowflake. As soon as new data arrives there, we're picking it up, transforming it, and sending it into a target table that has the right shape for our dashboards and our analytics. So what I would like to do is to take you through the steps that we have taken to build out this end-to-end demo and show you parts of the demo along the way. So let's move over here. What we're looking at right now is the first piece of the pipeline. It's Kafka. We're connected to the Kafka console, and we're listening to the topic that's consuming the events from the device that you just saw. For a real-world scenario at scale, we'll probably expect to have hundreds, thousands, or millions of devices sending their data into this topic. In this case, it's just one device, the single device that I just held up. You can also see that the data is being rendered in JSON, which is nice. And we obviously would like to load the data into Snowflake now to run queries and analytics over it. Now, with the new Snowflake connector for Kafka, this gets really easy. You install the connector by installing a jar into your Kafka Connect cluster. This is where you run it. We are hosting and running our own Kafka cluster in the AWS EC2. And let me show you the Snowflake Kafka connector configuration so that you get a sense of what it takes to set this up. It's fairly straightforward. It's just a couple of lines. Probably the most interesting piece is what's the set of topics that you are listening to on the Kafka side. And you can see here we're listening to a topic that's called activity raw. The next couple of parameters define what Snowflake account you're connecting with. And then here are a few other parameters that specify the target location for the data from the Kafka topic. And by default, the Kafka connector is using a table name that is the same name as a topic, as its target, which takes us over into the Snowflake side. So here I just switched over into the Snowflake web UI, and we're looking at the staging table here. And notice that it has the same name as the Kafka topic that we're listening to. You can also see we are using the familiar variant data type to store the JSON that we're receiving from the events from the device. Now we could stop at this point and just define a relational view over that table, promote out the properties from the JSON that we are interested in, and then run our analytics or queries over it. But as Christian mentioned, a lot of you have given us feedback that this is too simplistic. You need to run merge statements, or you have multi-statement transactions that need to maintain multiple downstream tables from your staging table. So to reflect these more complex business scenarios, I defined this additional table here that you see, which has a couple of columns to represent properties from the device data that we are receiving. So the objective now for us in the demo is to consume incrementally from the staging table new data as it arrives, transform it into the shape of the target table, and then write those transformed rows into the target table. We obviously want to do that in a highly reliable fashion with exactly once guarantees. For those of you who have worked in that space, you know how incredibly hard that is to implement and get right. So with the new capabilities for table streams and tasks, this gets a lot easier. Let me show you how. It's real estate here. So the first step that you take is to create an actual stream over your staging table. And that's those two lines that you see here. That gives you the ability, as Christian mentioned, to incrementally consume changes from the staging table through the stream with transactional guarantees. Once you have defined your stream, the next step is to define a task. And here you can see a task that defines our business logic. Let me take you through that task definition step by step. The first clause that you see here is the warehouse clause. It defines where your processing runs. In this case, it's a user warehouse called SnowTrack tasks. The next clause is the schedule clause, and it defines when your processing runs. Here you can see it runs every minute. You can also provide a cron definition for more complex schedules. Then comes the body of the task, which is the business logic that you want to run on that schedule. And you can see here, we're inserting into our target table the projection list in the select clause does the JSON parsing and the calculations that we want to do over the data. The from clause incrementally pulls the changes from the stream, from the staging table, whenever the task wakes up. And then the where clause illustrates how you can use a metadata column on the stream to make sure that you're only acting on actual insertions into the staging table. Once you have put these pieces for your pipeline together, you kick off the processing for your pipeline by calling an alter task resume statement. Once you have your pipelines running, you can switch over into the history view in the Snowflake web UI. And we've added a new checkbox that you see here that allows you to include the queries that are executed by user tasks. And when I refreshed this a little earlier today, you can see we had that task running about once every minute, which is exactly the schedule that we wanted. So let me take you over into a Looker report that you can see here. And the Looker report pulls data from the target table that we have been populating with that stream and with that task. And as you can see, the first chart plots the device activity, and you can see it's been very, very quiet for quite some time. And suddenly there's a spike in activity, which was me holding up the device and waving it at you. And it shows in this chart here. You can also see the orientation of the device. As I was picking it up and turning it around, the orientation of the device changed, and you can see that reflected in the chart here. Also, you can see, it's quite interesting, the last timestamp that we have received from the device. If you compare that to the current wall clock time on your wristwatches, you'll see that we're just a couple of minutes behind wall clock time, which is exactly what we want. So with that, I hope you got a sense of what you can accomplish with these new capabilities. The key 3 features that we talked about in this demo is the new Kafka connector for Snowflake. It allows you to load data from a Kafka topic directly into a Snowflake table. The second one is the new table streams. It allows you to consume changes incrementally from a table in Snowflake with reliable exactly once guarantees. The third one is scheduled tasks. Scheduled tasks allow you to schedule and run business logic completely inside Snowflake without having to worry about managing compute resources anywhere else. I very much look forward to the data pipelines that you are building with these new capabilities. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful summit.
Very, very powerful primitives. Invariably, when we talk about ingestion and transformation, the lakes come up as a topic. And how to think about Snowflake in the context of data lakes. And a data lake is a pattern, right? There's no technology that, oh, I bought data lake. No, it's a pattern that you follow. And your to-do list may look something like what you see on the screen. All my data is in one place, no silos. It has to be stored in the raw representation, emphasis on openness, et cetera, cheap storage. And what I would say is, if you do not have an existing data lake strategy, or you're about to start one, Snowflake is an amazing, amazing story for a data lake. It has all the capabilities. Say, you heard from Frank, single place for all the data, multiple workload, open formats, et cetera. But you get a lot more, right? What about governance and security and all the enhancements that I talked about and roles and role-based access control? You can do that if you were to say Snowflake is your data lake. Similarly, what about transactions, right? When you want to do transformations, when you want to move data around, when you want to combine data, do you want transactional consistency in your data or not? What about the ability to do data sharing? Frank talked about it. I'll have a little bit more in the next few slides. But it's powerful when your data doesn't just depend on your own data, but you enrich it based on others' data. And the same as, what about global presence? And what do you think about a cross-cloud data lake? And how does that work? And how does that look like? And the most important thing is that often the benefits of the data lake come with an accepted trade-off on performance. And our view at Snowflake is you do not need to trade off performance. You can get all of the benefits of the design pattern and still be screaming fast. And the last piece, even if you have the technology that does all of this, when it's not a managed service, keeping the infrastructure running to make all of this work is not easy. And with Snowflake, we're delivering all of this as a managed service, a solution that just focuses you on get value out of the data. If that is not a compelling statement, I'll give you a deeper thought. We were staring at this slide with Frank, and it says Snowflake. And we said, ooh, there's a lake in Snowflake. So that's the answer. So that you know that Snowflake is a good story for a data lake. But many of you, and we talk constantly with many of you that have existing data lake implementations, and this diagram might be familiar to those of you that have a set of files in an object store. You may be tracking table metadata with a Hive meta store, and on the side you have Snowflake, which has some tables. You decide what to ingest, and you have a SQL interface on top of those tables. So we also want to augment and enrich your existing data lake. It doesn't have to be that you have to replace your data lake with Snowflake. No, I just said if you don't have it, it's a wonderful solution. If you already have it, we're going to make it better. And here's a number of enhancements and investments that we're doing to do so. First one is the notion of external tables. Very simple concept, known in other database systems. And an external table is one where the definition of a table exists on the Snowflake side, but the data, the actual files that make up those tables, lives on the data lake. Benefit, you get the full SQL query language, so now as a consumer, you get SQL access to data both in internal tables as well as external tables, and you can join between those. We're also announcing today the work and the capability to have a Hive Metastore integration, where we're providing a listener that will get deployed into your Hive Metastore integration, and as changes, table definitions, partition information changes in the Hive Metastore, those events are replayed on Snowflake's side, updating external tables. We heard feedback from many of you. I already have 10,000 or 100,000 tables defined in my Hive Metastore. Make it easy for me, and that's what we've done. And we didn't stop there. We really care a lot about this notion that you should not compromise on performance. And we're also enabling the ability to have materialized views on top of external tables. Those materialized views could be a small projection or an aggregate, and with that you get the best of both worlds. You get the performance by querying the materialized view as if you had ingested the data into Snowflake, but also you get the data, the source data, to still reside in the data lake. And of course, there's automatic maintenance and push of data from the lake as new data arrives into the external table and update the materialized view. So key message here is we can be your data lake, but we can also augment and enrich your data lake. Snowflake is a great solution to help you if you want to follow the data lake pattern. So you may be thinking, when is all of this going to be available? I'd like to try it out at some point. And I want to thank a number of people throughout Snowflake that worked pretty hard to line up a pretty large set of public previews. And I'm delighted to announce that today, available in public preview, every feature that I just talked in the last few seconds, credential list, Snowpipe, Kafka, streams, tasks. And even Frank added some snow into this. Okay, I'm going to move on to the third section, which is around our vision for a global Snowflake. And if the world was simple, you'd have all your data and all your apps in a single region, single data center, single cloud, and yeah, probably that would be a simpler set of systems and infrastructure to manage. But of course, the world is never simple. There's lots of reasons. You may have different applications and different groups that start in different regions, or you're a global company and you need to comply with data residency and EU or Canada, et cetera. And there's also the notion of disaster recovery, which is if you put all your eggs in a single basket, what if disaster strikes? And our vision at Snowflake is to deliver a single global Snowflake and make all of this simple for you. We want to remove the details on how many regions and clouds, because the multi-cloud, as we just established, it's a reality, it's a preference, and we want to simplify all of that for you. So how are we going to do that? First, we're introducing the concept of a Snowflake organization, which is a logical construct that lets you manage multiple accounts. We're going to give you the ability to monitor usage across all of your Snowflake accounts within a single organization, and we're going to let you specify parameters or policies within the organization. Second concept is around database replication. And we're introducing the ability to take data from one Snowflake account, take a database, and replicate it to another Snowflake account. And invariably, when I talk about this, I get the question, but why do I need this? I already do, I don't know, S3 replication or something like that. And this is a 20-plus-year-old question. Storage vendors have always had replication. Database vendors have always had replication. And the reason is because if you do it at the database level, you get transactional consistency and I assume most of you want your data to be consistent, especially in the time when you need to use copies on the other side. So we're introducing database replication, and it's going to work cross-region from any two accounts in Snowflake, but also cross-cloud. So this is the first time that we're doing transactional replication cross-cloud. And we didn't stop there. Of course, business continuity is a priority for all of you, and if it's a priority for you, it's a priority for us. And we're also enabling, on top of replication, the notion of being able to fail over a primary instance to a secondary instance and fail it back. And as soon as I say that, what you think is, oh, what about my applications and my dashboards? We are also doing the client redirect by which you can configure it. Thank you. You can configure it to have your clients follow the primary. So instead of talking as much, why don't we see this in action? I'm going to invite Chris Child, Product Manager for Global Account Management. Please welcome Chris.
Thanks, Christian. All right, so I'm really excited to give you a tour of global Snowflake today for the first time. And as Christian mentioned, we're going to go through three quick parts of this. First, we'll talk about organizations and how you can use them to view all of your Snowflake accounts in any region or any cloud from one place, how you can create new accounts yourself, and how you can monitor usage and understand exactly what you're spending globally across every instance of Snowflake that you have. We'll also demo database replication and show how you can seamlessly move data between these accounts, even across clouds. And finally, we'll look at transparent client failover to show how you can redirect all of your clients between those different accounts very easily and seamlessly. So let's go check this out. First, organizations. Rather than create a special place for you to go to understand all your different accounts, we've just built this right into the Snowflake UI. I have a new role here called org admin, and org admin allows me to administer the entire organization from any of the accounts that are part of it. I have a new tab called organizations, and from here I can see all of the accounts I have that are part of this org. In this particular organization, I've got two accounts, both in AWS, one in US West and one in US East that I can see here. But what I've come in to do today isn't just to look at my accounts. I've got a new business unit that's coming on board and has heard a lot about Snowflake and wants to try it out for themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and set them up with their own account. When I go in here to create an account, you'll notice that I'm logged into AWS right now. But because Snowflake is now global, I can choose any cloud that I want to create an account from here, and it will show up in my same list. I can then choose any region that I want. But for this, let's go ahead and set one up in Azure. I'll choose a region, and then I come in and just configure the account. Choose the edition that I want it to be, and then set up the administrator. And that's about it. The reason that I set up a special administrator here is that, and a lot of our customers have talked to us about wanting to have very sensitive data in some of their accounts. And they want to have administrators who actually can't access that data. So in this particular case, Dennis, who I've made the administrator, will be able to log in and do anything that he wants to within this account. But I, as the org administrator, actually can't get into the account. I can't view any of the data. I can't make any changes there. There's a really strong separation between the account and the organization. You also see that that completed in just a few seconds. So now I have an account in Azure that I can log into, load data into, consume compute in, all within just a few seconds and all by myself. Another thing that organizations provide for you is centralized billing. So even though I've got these multiple accounts consuming credits in different clouds, they're all billed against my single contract with Snowflake. So if I have a capacity deal or if I'm an on-demand customer, all of this usage is brought together and charged back to the contract that I have with Snowflake. That's great, but as an administrator of this, I want to know exactly what's happening. How much money are my different teams spending? How many credits are they using? And so we've created a new data share that works a lot like the account usage that you already have today, except it consolidates data from every single account that you have. Here, I'm showing one for an organization with a handful of different accounts. This is a dashboard that I've created on top of this underlying data. I can see the compute usage by account and how it's changing week over week. I can see the storage used by different accounts and see that my second account here has been growing the amount of data they're storing pretty significantly. I can also go into more detail. So here I've got warehouse usage on an hourly basis, spread across every single one of my accounts. So if there's a spike because a new job started or something, I'll see it here very quickly within an hour or so, and I can go talk to the people running that account to figure out exactly what's going on. So that's organizations. But having all these different accounts is only as powerful as the data that I have within them. And so to complement this, we've also built database replication. Database replication is really easy to use and set up. All I need is an organization that's got a couple accounts in it in different regions. And today, I'm going to make use of the fact that Snowflake's multi-cloud, and I'm going to go ahead and replicate some data here live from AWS across to Azure. And not just between clouds, we're going to do this across the country, from US West to US East. Here in my account in AWS, I've got a bunch of data that I've loaded into this database, my demo DB. I have a bunch of tables, some views, some transient tables, and I've run a simple query here to just look at the shape of what this data looks like in one of the views. There's a lot of stuff going on in this database, which is sort of the point of using database replication. And here, just so that we can double check ourselves later, we can see that in 1979, there are about 135 rows of movie prizes that were given out that year. So to get this data replicated to Azure, I first go and just enable this database to be replicated. This is going to broadcast this database to all of the other accounts in my organization and allow them to pick it up and start loading the data back into them. I'll switch over to the Azure account now, where I can see that I have no databases currently set up. This account's completely empty. I'm going to go ahead and create a secondary. From here, I just choose the account and the database that I just broadcast, and I go ahead and create the secondary database. Now, once I've done this, I can jump back over here to Azure, and within a few seconds, I'll be able to see that the database is actually linked and shows up here. This works in any direction. I'm able to make this replicate data from Azure to AWS and then back from AWS to Azure seamlessly and easily. So now that I've got it connected, I'll go ahead and kick off a refresh. This is going to go reach out across the accounts and pull over not just the databases, but the views, the tables, everything else. The first time I do this, it brings all of my data across. But in the future, I'm able to run this really, really quickly and seamlessly because we do just incremental refreshes using the streams infrastructure that we showed you earlier. So only the changes that you make to your data move across. In this case, I'm replicating a pretty small data set so that it finishes while we're all here talking. But we've run this with customers on petabytes of data on hourly refreshes. So you're able to keep your data up to date with massive data sets easily and quickly. The other thing that's really powerful about this is because we run it on a per database level, I can set up pretty complicated different structures of data replication. I can load data locally wherever it's being generated, in the US, in Europe, in Asia Pacific, into different clouds. I can then perform transformations locally on the data where I load it, and then I can replicate just the transformed data between those same set of accounts, so I have a complete set of data everywhere that I need to query it. And as Christian said before, this allows me to query my data wherever it's cheapest and easiest for me to do so. So here I can see that my refresh completed. It took about 40 seconds to move my whole database over. Let's go check and see if it actually worked. So I can come back in now, again, still all running in Azure, and I can see that the database has come over. I've got all the same tables, even the transient tables and views came across. And I'm going to go ahead and run the exact same query that I ran in AWS. But I'm now consuming storage and compute in Azure. And I can see I get the exact same data came through. So my teams operating in Azure, my teams operating in AWS can do the same work on the same data, even though they're running on replicas that are in different sides of the country in different clouds. So that's database replication. But the third piece of this, as you've all guessed, you can start to use this for things like business continuity and disaster failover. Every single one of these secondaries that I've created is a full read-only replica of all the data. I can run all my analytics workloads and everything else on those locally without needing to reach across. But sometimes I want my clients to switch over which account they're running on, either for loading data or for reading data. And so for that, what we've done is we've created a new thing called transparent client failover. And this works with all of the clients that you're used to using today. As a quick example of this, we're going to go ahead and use Tableau. So here, I have a Tableau dashboard that I've set up, and I'm running it, as you'll see here, with a simple query that we've built. It's running in the US West region. I'm going to go ahead and trigger a failover now. So I've logged into an account that I have in US East, and I've run just create this connection as a primary. We've created a new object called the connection object that gives you a new unique connection string per connection. And you can use that string in any of the clients and drivers that Snowflake supports. As soon as I run this, it triggers an update of the DNS records and redirects all the traffic that was previously hitting that endpoint now to a different account running in a different region in the cloud. So now, hopefully that's propagated. It usually takes about 15 seconds. But I can go in now and actually just refresh my dashboard. And as soon as this refresh happens, I should see that the exact same results have come back and populated, except this time we should see that this is actually running the query in US East. Now, you notice my analysts didn't even notice. They didn't have to update anything. They didn't have to change anything. The next time they came in and ran their query, it was running against a different data set running in a different region. And so here we have it coming back from US East. So that's global Snowflake. You've seen organizations, which lets you create and manage all of your accounts yourself. You've seen database replication, which allows me to bring my data with me to whatever region I happen to be working in. And you've seen failover, which allows me to switch where I'm loading data, where I'm reading data, and do it all without the clients noticing. We're really excited to bring this to you and get it in your hands soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Pretty powerful. If you take one thing away, we're making multi-cloud easy for you. For those of you that want it, we're making it easy. So we have a number of customers already using database replication in private preview. Our goal is to open it up to all of you in Q3, so stay tuned, it's coming soon. And then I'll shift to the last section, last but not least, an update on secure data sharing. Frank covered a lot of the use cases and how data sharing is more common than you might think. So I would encourage you to use the conference to learn more and figure out how to leverage data sharing. Technology has been in the product for over a year, and the most common feedback we get is, how do I know who I can share data with? And the answer was exactly, I stole the slide from Frank on. There's a data exchange that has an integrated experience. It lets you see the data by categories, and it lets you see sample queries, sample usage for the data. This is about making it easy to discover who is sharing or who is willing to share data via Snowflake. The other piece of feedback that we heard from many providers was around, oh, many of my consumers don't want generic data. Many of my consumers want data that's specific to their company or their use case. And as part of that, we also innovated, and now we're introducing two concepts. One is a standard share, which is a share where all the consumers get the same type of data, but also a personalized share, where you as a consumer of my data as a data provider, you get to see your own data, and this is very unique and powered by our data sharing. The best way to understand this is to go look at the product and see a demo. Prasanna Krishnan is the product manager for data sharing and our data exchange. I want to welcome Prasanna to the stage.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to show you the Snowflake Data Exchange, the App Store for data, as Frank put it. The Data Exchange is a new section within the product from where you can discover new live data from a variety of data providers and consume this data instantly. Now, each listing that you see here is a share of data that actually is in the Snowflake account of the provider, going back to our separation of storage and compute. As a consumer, you can discover listings in categories that you care about. For example, marketing data from Wonderman, or any other category that you might be interested in. But what makes Snowflake's data exchange different from other data marketplaces is the fact that you can get two kinds of data, represented by the two kinds of shares you see here, standard and personalized shares, as Christian mentioned. Standard shares represent data that is the same across all customers. For example, demographic data, or weather, or even data on transportation trends. But personalized shares, which are unique to Snowflake, enable you to get your own data, be it your marketing campaign data or your web analytics data, from vendors that you already work with, and have this data be accessible only to you. So for example, Braze has two shares here, a standard share that contains typical open and click-through rates for email and push notification campaigns. As a customer, you can leverage this to compare the performance of your own marketing campaigns against a continuously updated view of benchmark data by industry. But if you are a customer of Braze, then you can get your own marketing campaign raw event data shared with you through the personalized share and have that be continuously updated. I'll now walk through each of these kinds of shares, both standard and personalized shares. Let's start with standard shares. So let's say you're an executive at a B2B business, and you're interested in deciding if you should increase your sales and marketing spend in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, you have data on your customers in Snowflake. This is from your CRM system. So your customers are currently mostly in the US, and you have data on their account, website, and account owner, and so on. What you would really like to know is how much of your customers' website traffic, and therefore their business, comes from the Asia-Pacific region. But you don't have data on traffic to their websites. Now, today, if you had to solve this problem, you would first have to find a vendor who has this data, negotiate with the vendor to get a trial, understand their schema, and at which point they might send you a CSV file that you need to ETL in. It's already been weeks that you haven't even started your analysis. But what's worse is that because web traffic changes so quickly, the CSV file is already outdated by the time you receive it. And if you had to do this analysis again in 6 months, you would have to start all over. Sounds super painful. Well, with Snowflake, you go to the data exchange, and you discover a listing from Intricately that has data on cloud spend and website traffic for 7 million businesses around the world. That sounds interesting. So you read more, and you see from the sample queries that they have data on the Asia-Pacific region as well. So you decide to get this data, and you click the Get button, and you can immediately create a database from the shared data that lives in Intricately's Snowflake account. Think about this for a second. Instead of weeks, within seconds, you have a database that you can query instantly. And what's more important is that this database is effectively a pointer to the data that lives in Intricately's account, and so it's always up to date, and it doesn't take up any storage space in your account. You can go query this data right away. So let's go to the worksheet and see how many customers in Intricately's data set have at least 5% of their traffic coming from the Asia-Pacific region. So you run the query, leveraging the database that you just got. Well, that's interesting. But what will be more interesting is if you could join this with your own customer data in Snowflake. So let's do that. So you go to your own customer data, and you join the data that you got from Intricately with your customer CRM data on the website column to see how many of your customers have 10% or more of their traffic coming from the Asia-Pacific region. Almost 10% of your customers. Well, that's pretty significant. You were able to make an important business decision by leveraging the vast amounts of data that lives outside your own company, and you were able to do that faster than ever before. So let's now switch gears and take a look at a personalized share. Let's say you use Heap as your web analytics vendor to track user interactions on your web and mobile apps. Today, if you had to get Heap data into a data warehouse, you would have to ETL it in or call an API. That means the data is not always fresh, and it takes up significant engineering investment. One of our customers pointed out that they were spending 15% of their engineering resources on just managing data feeds and calling APIs from different vendors. Now, in contrast, with Snowflake, you discover the Heap tile in the listing. You click on it, and because this is a personalized share, you make a request to Heap to enable your own personalized share. The request gets sent off to Heap. Heap provides the ability for you to get your Heap data in Snowflake as a new product. So once they validate you within Heap's UI, they create a mapping between your Heap account ID and your Snowflake account. And when you hit Save and Connect here, they create a personalized share with secure views that have your own data that is shared securely with you. Now, what makes personalized shares really powerful is the fact that only Snowflake allows a provider to share a real database view. So what this means is that while a provider might have data on all of their customers, instead of creating 1,000 shares for 1,000 customers, they can create secure views that dynamically filter to give you your own slice of your data, and no one else has access to your data. So once Heap creates this share that is accessible to you, let's go back and see how you can query this data. So you have a database that you've created from the share that Heap enabled for you, and the little arrow here shows you that this is a database from the share that doesn't actually take up storage in your account. You can then go and query this database right away to see what are the top events to your application or website. And you can see that the data is fresh and updated as it arrives in Heap. So as a consumer, you were able to get data that is your own data shared securely with you. And as a provider, this enables Heap to build new products and new revenue streams. So that, in a nutshell, is the Snowflake Data Exchange. Everything that I showed you is live in our US West region. You can request to join the private preview from our website to join as either a provider or as a consumer. And we very much look forward to building it with you. Thank you.
It's pretty powerful. We're in the early stages of building up the exchange. I would encourage all of you to think, as a consumer or a provider, do you have data to make available in the exchange, or is there data in the exchange of interest to you? So this brings us to the end of this journey. 4 areas we discussed. We're investing heavily in our core data warehouse capability, but we continue to invest in new areas like data pipelines, like our global Snowflake, as well as data sharing. And my message to all of you is we are committed to continue to innovate, to make Snowflake even awesomer, to make it work harder for you, to simplify your lives and to help you get value out of your data. The rest of the conference has no end of interesting content. There's keynotes, breakout sessions, hands-off labs, theater sessions. There's 200 plus of us from Snowflake here. We want to hear from you and get to know you. So hopefully it comes across the rest of the conference as an avalanche of innovation. And I expect you to be relentless in your pursuit of getting value out of data, getting value out of this conference. And with that, I'll say thank you so much.